The Nintendo Switch 2 is finally here. Sleeker, stronger, shinier. It's everything we expected, maybe even more. But before you trade in your Steam Deck or hop on eBay to offload your handheld setup, let's have a real conversation. Because as exciting as the Nintendo Switch 2 is, I don't think it makes the deck obsolete. In fact, I think it makes a Steam Deck even more relevant. It's time to talk about the quiet part out loud. The cost of making consumer tech is going up. Even on older process nodes like 6nm or 7nm, it's getting harder and more expensive to manufacture chips. Long gone are the days of your PS2, Wii, and Xbox 360 getting cheaper models as the console generation went on. The PS5, the Xbox Series X, and even, yes, the Steam Deck, all of them are facing the pressure of what I like to call a technical recession, where innovation doesn't slow down, but affordability does. So while the Switch 2 may launch at a competitive price, that number is hiding a ton of compromise. The silicon alone, even built on Samsung's competitive 8nm node, was likely a challenge to budget, so I wouldn't expect any discounts further into this console generation. Meanwhile, Valve already weathered the storm with their 6nm die-shrunk APU. The deck is mature hardware now, with parts and pricing that have stabilized. Not to mention, the entry point to the ecosystem is much cheaper versus the Nintendo. The Switch 2's custom NVIDIA chip is based on a modified T239 SoC. If you're familiar with the NVIDIA Jetson developer kits, then the specs should look familiar. You're getting similar ARM CPU cores and a bespoke Ampere GPU architecture with DLSS support baked in, smart, efficient, and purpose-built. But let's not forget what Valve pulled off with the Steam Deck. A Zen 2 plus RDNA 2 APU, now on 6nm, complete with a proper desktop-like driver stack. It's not just flexible, it's also quite bespoke. If you look at current AMD offerings, you'll notice that they lack a certain level of purpose-built chips for handheld gaming. And you'll be forgiven for thinking that their Z-series chips are that. But truthfully, on a technical scale, they pale in comparison to the work that AMD and Valve did on the Deck APU. Those Z-series chips are just rebadged laptop chips that AMD slightly tweaked, things like clock speed regressions and no NPUs. Now, the Sephiroth APU inside the Deck was made specifically for power-constrained computing, and it shows with how competitive it is even today. It is bespoke silicon in the same vein as the consoles. You can't really target a ROG Ally for special optimizations, but you can do that for a Steam Deck. Now, the Switch 2 will optimize games for 30 to 40 FPS targets, sometimes upscaled with DLSS. But the Deck, it runs actual PC versions, many above 60 FPS, and it lets you decide where to sacrifice performance. Now, I know it's not magic, but still, bear with me. And while the Switch 2 may edge out power efficiency in standby or during lighter loads, the Deck wins in raw throughput, multitasking, and customization. And this is a relevant point to bring up because developers will optimize for the lowest common denominator, and in our case, that's the Switch 2 by far. It's a follow-up to a somewhat successful console, some would say. So expect the optimizations done to support that machine to trickle over down to the PC space, which is an excellent segue into one of the main sticking points in the discourse of Switch versus other machines, the software stack. And this is where the two really split ideologically. The Switch 2's OS is tight, focused, and polished. No bloat, no surprises, but also no freedom. Compare that to the Steam Deck, where you can install mods, add storefronts, access the Linux desktop, and emulate almost anything. Valve's constant Proton updates mean compatibility is only getting better. Meanwhile, Nintendo locks everything down, you're renting the experience, so to say. And listen, some people prefer that, but others want a device that works for us, not the other way around. And when you look at the games these systems actually run, that divide between them starts to blur even more. The biggest misconception? That Nintendo lives in its own software universe. Sure, their first-party games are legendary, but third-party is where the real overlap begins. The Switch 2 will have Persona, Monster Hunter, Final Fantasy, remasters, indie hits, and does that sound familiar? Because all of those are also going to be on the Steam Deck, and they're going to run oftentimes better. Same games, same genres, but with modding support, better scalability across the board, and the occasional frame rate bump. And I get it. Unless you only care about first-party Nintendo games, it's not so much a competition as it is a choice of priorities. And it makes sense to me. I get it. Nintendo has stellar software libraries. I love their games, I really do. But sometimes I feel one has to take a more principled approach to gaming and the platforms they support. Here's the bottom line. The Switch 2 looks like a fantastic console, a very excellent follow-up to its predecessor, but it doesn't erase the Steam Deck. If anything, it reinforces why we need options. You don't need to ditch your deck to chase the hype, not when you're holding a platform that's open, mature, and only getting better with time. Just like my channel, which is also getting better as time goes on. I'm the Silicon Fox, and if you want more handheld deep dives, benchmark breakdowns, and hardware head-to-heads, please kindly do the YouTube things. But until next time, stay sharp, play smarter. I'll see you all then. Ciao.